So today we're going to do a very important chapter which is called as environmental chemistry. See, what is environment? An environment is the sum total of all conditions that influences the development of all living organisms on earth. So everything that surrounds us which will affect and influence the development of life around us, okay, is called as environment. Now environment consists of two components. One is the non-living component and the other is living component. Okay, so the non-living component comprises of three parts, which is atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. All right, and the living component comprises of biosphere. Now the biosphere would include everything: plants, living organisms, animals, microbes, etc. All right. Now, see, why are we studying this chapter? We are studying this chapter in order to understand how can we better take care of an environment to prevent the degradation of environment or the pollution of different types of environment, which in turn will affect the life on earth. All right. So because of human activities, this environment is undergoing high degree of degradation. Okay, so first is we're going to study how our environment is getting polluted. So we're going to study environmental pollution. So what's pollution? Pollution is mixture or degradation of the environment. All right, now this pollution is basically divided into three types. Okay, first, the pollution of air, which would be the pollution of atmosphere. Next is pollution of land, which would be lithosphere. And the next is pollution of water, which would be hydrosphere. Okay. Now a substance which is causing the pollution is called as a pollutant. So substance which is causing the degradation in quality is called as a pollutant. So what's a pollutant? A substance that causes pollution. A substance that causes pollution. All right. Now, some basic causes of pollution would be, why is pollution occurring? Because in this era of technology, there has been industrialization, okay, which has resulted in release of large poisonous matter. Huge amount of industries are being set up every day. So large manufacturing units also would contribute to pollution. Excessive use of fertilizers, pesticides, atomic and nuclear development of atomic and nuclear energy, all of these has caused a rise in pollution. So pollution has basically undergone increase because of industrialization, large manufacturing units being set up, Now, these manufacturing units would comprise of manufacturing of medicines, drugs, dyes, chemicals, pesticides, then excessive use of pesticides and fertilizers. They cause soil pollution. Then development of nuclear and atomic energy. They cause nuclear pollution. Very dangerous. Nuclear and atomic energy. And large amount of effluents that is released from industry, especially toxic gases. All right, all these contribute to increase in pollution. Now let's study the first pollution, which is atmospheric pollution. So first we're going to study what is atmospheric pollution. Now what is atmosphere? Atmosphere is the region of air which is present above the earth's surface, and this atmosphere extends up to the height of 500 kilometers. Okay, so it extends up to the height of 500 kilometers. All right, and the approximate mass of the atmosphere is 4 to 5 into 10 raised to 15 metric tons. The mass of atmosphere is 4 to 5 10 raised into 10 raised to 15 metric tons. Okay, now the lowest region of atmosphere is troposphere. Okay, so the lowest region is troposphere. Now what is troposphere? Where all of the living organisms, plants, and every living creature lives. Okay, so where all living organisms and we live. Then above troposphere is stratosphere. This stratosphere consists of nitrogen, oxygen, ozone, alright, and it also consists of very little of water vapor. Ozone, as we know, is very important because it gives us protection from harmful UV radiations that are being emitted from sun. We are going to study this ozone depletion as well as how ozone is protecting us and how we can prevent its depletion in detail in the latter part of the chapter. Now let's move on to tropospheric pollution. Okay. Now this tropospheric pollution is mainly caused because of the first causation of this type of pollution is air pollutants, gaseous air pollutants. Gaseous air pollutants. So the first is oxides of carbon. Now by oxides of carbon I mean carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. So these are oxides of carbon which are one of the most harmful pollutants. Okay, so first let's see carbon monoxide. Okay, now carbon monoxide, it is colorless, tasteless and non-irritating gas. Okay, it is sparingly soluble in water and it is highly toxic. The most toxic effect is it reduces the oxygen carrying capacity. It reduces oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin. So the oxygen carrying capacity is reduced. Okay, and it can be fatal if it is exceeding 100 parts per million concentration. How is it produced? What are the different sources of carbon monoxide? It is produced by incomplete combustion of fuels. Incomplete combustion of fuels. It is also produced from industrial furnaces. cigarette smoking, then emission of industrial gases. For example, coal gas, destructive distillation of coal consists of 5 to 10% of carbon monoxide. So different industrial gases also leads to the emission of carbon monoxide into the atmosphere. Next, beside these sources, carbon monoxide is also produced from some natural sources. Now, by natural sources, I mean something which is beyond man control. So, natural sources which contribute to carbon monoxide emission is volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, etc. Volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, etc. So, these are the different sources of carbon monoxide emission. Now, a very important phenomena which we need to understand is what is carbon monoxide poisoning. See, we all know hemoglobin combines with oxygen, right? It carries oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. Now, these oxyhemoglobin travels through arteries to our various cells. When it is nearing our cells, its pressure is reduced and oxygen from this oxyhemoglobin is released. So cells use this oxygen to carry out their various activities. Now if air is also containing carbon monoxide, this hemoglobin has a high tendency to combine with carbon monoxide. So what will it do is, this oxyhemoglobin, when it is coming in presence of carbon monoxide, now this hemoglobin has a high tendency for carbon monoxide. So what it will form is HbCO. An oxygen gas will be released. So now this oxygen is not available for cells to carry out their activities. So this is called as decrease in oxygen carrying capacity. Now, because of this decrease in oxygen carrying capacity, it can lead to various harmful effects like there may be starvation, dizziness, headache. It can lead to cardiac complications as well. All right. If in pregnant women, see, there are many pregnant women, especially in Western countries, who smoke a lot, chain smokers. So we know smoking is one of the factors which causes the release of carbon monoxide. So what happens is, if pregnant women who are having the habit of smoking, the CO2 level or the CO level in their blood increases, because of which there are high cases of abortions and deformed babies. All right. Now, how can we treat this hemoglobin or reduced capacity of hemoglobin to carry oxygen? See, if we expose the patient to high level of oxygen at a high pressure, which is 2 to 2.5 atmosphere. So what will happen is, this CO from hemoglobin will be removed and it will be replaced by oxygen to again form oxyhemoglobin. So this is called as treatment of carbon monoxide poisoning. All right. So the first gas that we have studied is carbon monoxide, the first oxides of carbon which is causing the gaseous pollutant. The next we're going to study is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is also colorless and odorless, and it is 1.5 times heavier than air. Alright, if it is kept in small quantities, it will not affect the living organisms. However, if it is exposed to excess amount, the most dangerous effect that it is contributing to is global warming. Hence, carbon dioxide is classified as greenhouse gases. We're going to study this phenomenon in detail later. Basically, these are gases which causes an increase in temperature of Earth. Hence, they are called as greenhouse gases. Alright. Now, what are the different sources of carbon dioxide releases? First, burning of fossil fuels. So, burning of fossil fuels like coal, natural gas, etc. It causes the release of carbon dioxide. Next, cultivation of soil. Now this involves bacteria which are involved in cultivation of soil. They released carbon dioxide. Okay. Then industrial processes, various industrial processes like alcohol formation, lime formation, all these also causes release of carbon dioxide. See, lime is nothing but calcium carbonate. At 1250 degrees Celsius का temperature, it would form calcium oxide and carbon dioxide gas would be released. Similarly, glucose. We know ethyl alcohol is formed from glucose. So C6H12O6, glucose in the presence of yeast, that is zymase, it will be forming ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide gas will be released. Alright. Next source is decay of dead organism. This creates a foul smell which also contribute to release of carbon dioxide. Alright. Now, these are the sources of carbon dioxide. Now, who consumes carbon dioxides? Plants. So, carbon dioxide is consumed by plants. They inhale carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Hence, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. Hence, plants helps us to maintain the balance of carbon dioxide in our environment. Even oceans dissolve carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to form carbonate rocks. So they also consume carbon dioxide. So oceans and plants are very important since they help in reduction in the carbon dioxide level in our atmosphere. Now let's study what would be the effects of CO2 in atmosphere. We've already studied the effect of carbon monoxide. We said that it is having carbon monoxide poisoning. Now let's see the effects of carbon dioxide. The main effect is that we said it's a greenhouse gas. That means it is causing global warming. Alright. So the major effect of CO2 is global warming. Of carbon monoxide was carbon monoxide poisoning. The third oxides that we're going to study is oxides of sulfur. Now there are two oxides of sulfur which are going to cause environmental pollution, sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide. Carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide were colorless, odorless and it was non-irritating, right? But sulfur dioxide, it has an irritating odor. So it will affect the respiratory system. Okay, and the damage to lungs is very severe. What are the sources? Sources of sulfur dioxide would be volcanic eruptions, then oil and coal impurity. They both on burning would release sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. Then hydrogen sulfide, when it is discharged into the atmosphere by a natural process, is converted to sulfur dioxide by oxidation. Okay. So even H2S discharge or H2S undergoes oxidation to again form sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. Next source is power plants, coal-based refineries, and H2SO4 manufacturing units. H2SO4 manufacturing units. They also release sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. Now roasting it is involved. This process is burning at a very high temperature. It is involved in metallurgy. What is metallurgy? Study of extraction of metals from their ores. Okay, so while roasting of different metals, even sulfur dioxide is released into the atmosphere. Okay, so these are the different sources. Let's study some effects. We said it is having a very irritating odor, so that means it is first going to affect the respiratory system. Respiratory system is severely affected. Even the lungs are very adversely affected. Alright, so it will cause different kinds of diseases like asthma, emphysema, bronchitis. Then it will cause irritation of all mucous membrane lined region. So irritation of eyes, nose, throat, etc. Then in plants, it will cause decolorization. Okay, and it will also cause decolorization of paper, leather, etc. Okay, now see, we said that we are going to study two types of oxide, sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide. Now how this sulfur trioxide form? Let's study. See, either sulfur dioxide will react with oxygen in the atmosphere to form sulfur trioxide. Now this may occur either in the presence of the photolytic light, or it can also occur by process of oxidation, catalytic oxidation, again in the presence of light. So this will form sulfur trioxide. Okay, the reaction can also be carried out by ozone as well as hydrogen peroxide. So SO2 will react with H2O2 to form sulfuric acid, which is aqueous. Alright, so sulfur dioxide can either undergo oxidation in the presence of light, it can react with ozone again in the presence of light to form sulfur trioxide, and it can also react with H2O2 to form sulfuric acids. The next oxide that we're going to study is oxides of nitrogen. Now nitrogen oxides are of various forms. It can be nitrogen monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, nitrogen trioxide, N2O3 is nitrogen trioxide. It can be nitrogen pentaoxide, so it is N2O5. Okay, nitrous oxide gas is also a greenhouse gas. Means like carbon dioxide, it is going to contribute to global warming. Now, what are the different sources? Let's study the sources. So each of the oxides, two very important points would be sources and effects. Okay, so the first source is, see, when there is lightning and thunderstorm, what happens is nitrogen from air combines with oxygen to form nitrous oxide. Now this nitrous oxide further reacts with oxygen to form nitric oxide. Okay. Second source is during combustion. So during combustion of fuels, a huge amount of nitrogen dioxide is released. Next source, it is produced by the action of aerobic and anaerobic bacteria in the soil on nitrogen based fertilizers. So when aerobic and anaerobic bacteria carry out their activity in soil, they also release nitrogen oxides into the air. See, when there is burning of explosives like TNT, okay, so burning of explosives would also release emission of nitrogen dioxide, nitrous oxide. Next, bacterial decay of organics or organism. Bacterial decay of organic matter. So up till now we have studied three important oxide. First we said is carbon monoxide, next we said is carbon dioxide, then we said sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, and then nitrogen oxide, nitrous oxide, then nitrogen trioxide and nitrogen pentaoxide. For each of these oxides we need to remember the sources and their effects. Carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide, they are greenhouse gases. The most devastating effect of carbon monoxide is carbon monoxide poisoning, which reduces the hemoglobin, the capacity of hemoglobin to carry oxygen. Sulfur dioxide, it has a very harmful effect on our respiratory system. So all these oxides basically contribute to the pollution of air. Next, we're going to study a very important phenomena which is called as global warming. So global warming, and what are these greenhouse gases or the greenhouse effect? See, what's happened is the earth atmosphere traps the heat which is emitted from the sun and prevents it from escaping into the outer space. This causes rise in temperature of the earth. Okay, this is called as the global warming. Now see, earth has a protective layer of ozone. Okay, now this ozone prevents the harmful UV radiations from entering into the earth. Now when sunlight, so let's say this is earth. Here there is sun. Alright. So from the sun, there are different types of rays coming. So there is UV rays, there is infrared rays, there is visible rays. Okay. Different types of rays are coming. Now, these UV rays are prevented from entering into the earth by ozone. But we know ozone is already undergoing depletion. So now all of these are entering into the earth. Now at some distance from the earth is a thick layer of carbon dioxide. So here there is a thick layer of carbon dioxide. Okay. Which is let's say at a distance of about 15 kilometers from the lowest layer of atmosphere, which we said is troposphere. So now what is happening is this infrared rays, visible rays are coming into the earth. Okay, they are coming into the earth and they are falling on the top of the atmosphere. The harmful UV rays, this harmful UV rays is absorbed by ozone. So they do not reach the earth's surface. However, visible and IR rays pass through the CO2 layer and it reaches inside the earth. The result is that the earth is heated because of the heating effect of infrared radiation. As earth becomes hot and hot, it starts emitting heat back to the atmosphere. Okay, so it starts emitting heat back to the atmosphere. Now these emitted rays are absorbed by the CO2 in the atmosphere. In this way, CO2 does not allow the infrared radiations to go out of the atmosphere. So UV rays are prevented from coming into the earth by ozone, but IR and visible rays are entering. Now when they are entering, they cause an increase in the temperature, so they are reflected back. But they are not able to cross the atmosphere and go outside, because this carbon dioxide is again trapping them and confining them again to the atmosphere. So in this way, the temperature of the earth keeps on rising, and this phenomena is called as greenhouse effect. Now why this name has been kept as greenhouse effect is because this phenomena is only simple to the greenhouse effect. It's like a house which is enclosed of plastic or glass, where the sunlights are coming in, but the heat energy is not allowed to go back. So what is happening inside the greenhouse, the temperature is going on increasing, and hence it is given the name greenhouse effect. And the gases which contribute to greenhouse effect are called as greenhouse gases. Okay, it's very important to know that between the years 1878 to 90, the temperature had rose only from 0.45 degrees Celsius to 0.15 degrees Celsius. But in 2000, from 1990 to 2025, there has been a rise of 3 degrees Celsius temperature, and it is predicted that the temperature would rise to about 5 degrees Celsius. So 3 to 5 degrees Celsius temperature is increasing. So what will happen? Because this temperature is going on increasing, the icebergs which are in the Arctic and the Antarctic region would melt. The ice from these regions would melt, and it would eventually contribute to hurricanes. Then increase in global temperature would also cause an increase in the incidence of different types of infections like malaria, dengue, yellow fever. So some of the predicted consequences would be what would be the consequences of this greenhouse effect is there will be an increase in rainfall. Next would be it would cause formation of cyclones and hurricanes. So mass life destruction can occur. Next, it will also cause, there will be shifts in the fruit growing areas and will create less and less security for food supplies. So in some areas the rainfalls will be higher, and in some areas there will be droughts. So food supply will be affected. Next, it causes a disturbance in ecosystem. Now, why this ecosystem is disturbed in a specific area? If some species are not able to adjust into the changing climate, they would migrate. They would migrate into a more comfortable area. So mosquitoes may migrate into into regions that have warmed up. Okay, so but in this regions now the humans doesn't have the resistance to mosquitoes. So now more malaria will spread in such areas. Then there will be a rise in sea level. And the last would be there will be large scale population displacement. Alright. So this is global warming and greenhouse effect. Now let's study next important type of degradation of environment, which is caused by acid rain. Now what is this acid rain? So we know that the formation of nitric oxide and sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, all these are gaseous pollutants into the atmosphere, which would eventually lead to the formation of nitric acid and sulfuric acid. This is called as formation of acid rain. It influences every living organism in the atmosphere. So it would cause destruction of vegetation, then monuments ka degradation. So monuments would undergo degradation or corrosion. And it would also affect marine life. Alright. Now remember, in the natural atmosphere there is carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide plus water would form carbonic acid. This carbonic acid creates a pH of 5.6. So in the condition of acid rain, the pH, in the condition of acid rain, the pH will be lesser than 5.6. So acid rains would have a pH lesser than 5.6. Okay. Now let's see how are these acids formed. Okay. So let's see how is acid rain caused. The first is because of oxides of nitrogen. Okay, so see this. Nitrogen would react with oxygen to form nitrous oxide. This nitrous oxide would further combine with oxygen to form nitric oxide. This nitric oxide would further combine with water in the atmosphere or the vapor in the atmosphere to form nitric acid. And again nitrous oxide is released, which will again combine with the oxygen to form nitric oxide. So this is the formation of nitric acid into the acid rain. Second is because of oxides of sulfur. Alright, so we know sulfur dioxide undergoes oxidation in the presence of photolytic light to form sulfur trioxide, and sulfur trioxide would react with vapors in the atmosphere to form sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid and nitric acid, they both cause acid rains. Alright, another source would be presence of hydrogen sulfide gases. Okay, so since winds carry majority of the atmospheric contaminants across national borders, see acid rain can affect countries to countries. It can travel from countries to countries. So it has become an international issue. Now let's study effects of acid rain. The first effect, we said it would affect vegetation. Okay, so it will make the soil acidic. Then it would cause the acidic ions. Now what would be the acidic ions from sulfuric acid? It would be H plus, then sulfate ions and nitric ions. They all will be leached into the soil or leached in the nutrients. Then it will also damage leaves of plants. Okay, this is responsible for retarding forest. Next would be aquatic life. So what happens in aquatic life? Reproduction and survival rate is reduced. Reproduction and survival rate is reduced. The next effect is in fertility of soil. This is but obvious that it is going to degrade. So the fertility soil is going to degrade. Next is monuments. So building monuments undergo corrosion. See, understand, majority of monuments of importance are made from marbles, and these marbles are nothing but calcium carbonate. So these react with the acids and undergo corrosion. So CaSO4 is formed, water and carbon dioxide is released. So they undergo degradation. A very remarkable example is our very own Taj Mahal. It has undergone so much degradation because of the acid rain. Alright. The next is ecological balance is disturbed. How? Because this acid rains has caused complete abolishment of certain important bacteria. Okay, so the ecological balance has been disturbed. And human health, it can severely affect nervous system. All right, respiratory system and digestive system. So respiratory system is affected as well as digestive system is affected. They will have they will have an effect even on causation of neurological diseases. So acid rains, we said, mainly occurs because of the presence of sulfuric and nitric acid in the atmosphere. This is caused, how are they formed? Because of the oxides of nitrogen and sulfur reacting with the vapors in the atmosphere to form nitric and sulfuric acid. Its effect is on vegetation, aquatic life, fertility of soil, building monuments, ecological balance is disturbed, even human health is degraded to quite a lot extent. Okay, next we are going to study particulate pollutants. What do we mean by particulate pollutants? Now the word itself indicates particulates means very small. So particulate pollutants. So these are very finely divided suspended solids in the atmosphere. So what are particulate pollutants? Finely divided particles, solid particles. Okay, so these particles are solids or liquid droplets. Okay, now they may be either viable, that means it can be living, or it is non-viable. Now what are viable? Viable would be fungi, bacteria, algae. Okay, and what would be non-viable? Non-viable would be different kinds of particles in the atmosphere. Okay, so it may be particles of dust, it may be particles of metals, etc. All right, it could be mist, it could be fumes. Okay, now let's study what are the different sources of particulate pollutants. So the first source is smoke. Now smoke is emitted into the air by the process of combustion of fuels like coals and oils which are used in homes. Even power generation plants, they use coke, they generate a lot of smoke. Cigarette smoking also contribute to the formation of smoke. Burning activities. Okay, so smoking, burning activities, combustion, they will all cause smoke to be produced. Next, dust. Now dust are very fine solid particles. So these may be emitted from different factories and industries. Okay, so this is mainly released from industries, manufacturing units. Next is fumes. Fumes are produced during condensation of water vapors. And when would this happen? It would happen during the process of distillation, sublimation, boiling, and chemical reactions. And the last type of particulate pollutant, which is mists. How are mists formed? These are formed by these are very particles of spray liquids formed by the condensation of vapors in the air. Okay. Now, what are the effects? So, we said particulate pollutants are those which are very finely divided particles. It can be either of solids or it could be of liquid droplets. They are of two types, viable, which is living, so bacteria, fungi, algae. Non-viable would include dust, smoke, fumes, mist. And how could each of them be released? We have specified over here. Next, we need to understand what is the effect of such particulate pollutant. So women who are exposed to a high quantity of fine particulate matter, they have been found to deliver babies with small heads and bodies. So abnormal kids are born. Okay, abnormal kids born because the pregnant lady was exposed to a lot of particulate pollution. Then visibility is considerably reduced. Visibility is considerably reduced. Mercury, which is present as a pollutant, it will cause headache, nervousness, fatigue, and a number of other problems. It may even cause breakdown of CNS system. Next, the presence of lead. It keeps on accumulating. So it is a cumulative poison. It keeps on accumulating in the tissues of human body and in leaf tissues of the plants. And this causes malfunctioning of the red blood cells leading to anemia. Okay, so what happens is it keeps on accumulating in tissues of plants and animals, okay, which eventually reduces RBC, so it causes anemia. Even cadmium, okay, it mainly arises during the metallurgical processes of zinc and copper. It will again affect respiratory system, so it will cause lung irritation, vomiting, and hypertension. So increase in BP. Even exhaust gases from automobile discharge, they cause 1% of total mass of particulates in the atmosphere. Okay, so this will also lead to atmospheric pollution. So exhaust gases, then particulates play a major role in the formation of smog. Smog is also produced. Okay, so these are mainly the harmful or the drastic effects of particulate pollution. Now, what is this smog? Smog is basically a mixture of smoke and fog. Smoke and fog. Now, it is classified into two types. So, A is classical smog and the other one is photochemical smog. So let's study what is this classical smog. This is commonly known as or produced from So this is produced from sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide. Okay. So we are describing the same reaction. Sulfur dioxide undergoes oxidation to form sulfur trioxide. This sulfur trioxide will react with vapors to form sulfuric acid. Same way, nitrogen dioxide will react with water to form nitric oxide and nitrous acid. Now this resultant mixture consisting of sulfuric and nitric acid condensed on solid particulate matter and smoke present in the air to give a colloidal dispersion, which is called as smog or classical smog. Okay, so this sulfuric and nitric acid, they will be undergoing condensation on particulate matter to form a colloidal dispersion, and this colloidal dispersion of these acids is called as classical smog. Now let's study what is photochemical smog. Okay, this type of smog is formed by combination of smoke, dust, fog with oxides of nitrogen and hydrocarbons. Okay, so there are various steps involved in this. So what happens is, what are hydrocarbons? Hydrocarbons are those substances which are mainly consisting of hydrogen and oxygen, hydrogen and carbon atoms only. Okay, now hydrocarbons which are very reactive, containing double bond, they are released from automobiles. Okay, and they interact with ozone, they react with ozone to form a hydrocarbon free radical. So reactive hydrocarbons, by this we mean those hydrocarbons which contain double bonds. So these from automobiles will react with ozone to form hydrocarbon free radical. Okay, now this hydrocarbon free radical may also be formed by the reaction of hydrocarbons with atomic oxygen. Okay, now what happens is, these hydrocarbon free radicals, they react rapidly with oxygen to form another free radical. So they are reacting with oxygen to form another free radical, which is RCH2O2. Okay, this free radical in turns will react with nitric oxide present in the atmosphere to produce a third free radical, which would be RCH2O dot and NO2. Okay, now this, in this process, the NO is converted into NO2. This third free radical which is produced will react subsequently with oxygen, yielding an aldehyde. Now it is forming an aldehyde, that is RCHO, and it is generating a hydroperoxyl radical. So it is forming an aldehyde and it is forming an hydroperoxyl radical. So this is hydroperoxyl radical. The hydrocarbon radical reacts with a nitric oxide to give NO2 and generating a hydroxyl radical. So this aldehyde and hydroxyperoxyl radical will react with NO to form a hydroxyl radical and again NO2. Okay, now this NO2 will further react with hydrocarbon to form Once again, a hydrocarbon free radical, and this chain continues, which leads to the formation of photochemical smog products. Okay, then what also can occur is this aldehyde which is formed can react with the hydroxyl radical, producing an acyl radical, okay, which in turn will react with oxygen to form peroxyacyl radical. The peroxyacyl radical finally reacts with nitrogen dioxide to generate PAN. PAN is peroxyacyl nitrate. Okay. Now it is this PAN which is the constituent of smog which produces irritation to the eye. So the irritation is mainly caused because of this PAN. It can also cause irritation to nose, throat regions and several problems of eyes, lungs and heart. The photochemical smog also affects the growth of plants, causing to damage to vegetation. Alright. So this is photochemical smog. Okay. Now how can we suppress the photochemical smogs? The formation of this photochemical smog can be suppressed by the release of oxides of nitrogen and hydrocarbons in the atmosphere by the vehicles by using catalytic converters. Okay. It is possible by using fuels. It is possible by using fuels which will emit less amount of hydrocarbon free radical into the atmosphere. So in order to avoid this, we should use fuels like gasoline, which will cause less emission of hydrocarbon free radical. Okay, so how can more it be reduced is by using of catalytic converters. So this would disturb the chain of formation of smog. Okay. It is necessary to reduce this photochemical smog because it is having a very harmful effect on humans. Okay. The next important concept that we're going to study is, so now we have finished atmospheric pollution. Now we will look into stratospheric pollution. What is stratospheric pollution? In this, a very important concept is formation and depletion of ozone. Now we all know that Earth is protected by a blanket of ozone which prevents the harmful UV radiations from reaching the Earth. This UV radiations, if it reaches Earth, it can have adverse effects on DNA. It can lead to genetic malformation. It can also lead to skin cancer. It can lead to irritation, and hence usage of sunscreen has been increased in today's era. Alright. So how is ozone formed is oxygen in the presence of radiation would be forming nascent oxygen. Now this is followed by ozone producing reaction. This nascent oxygen plus oxygen would form ozone. These reactions occur very rapidly in the stratosphere over the tropics where solar radiations are very intense. So this is the formation of ozone. Now let's see how is the depletion of ozone occurring. So formation is mainly occurring in stratosphere where the light radiations are intense. Okay. Now depletion of ozone will be by colliding with other atoms and molecules. For example, when this ozone is again colliding with another nascent oxygen, it will form oxygen gas. Likewise, the combination of ozone with other molecule destroys the ozone. Now, potentially, a very serious threat in the stratospheric ozone comes from emission of chlorofluorocarbons. Chlorofluorocarbons are widely used in electric equipments like refrigerators and air conditioners, and they have a very harmful effect in depletion of the ozone. It is said for every chlorine atom that is released, as many as 100,000 molecules of ozone is destroyed. So CFCs are major factors in depletion of ozone. How? Because the CFCs release chlorine free radicals. Okay, and for every chlorine free radical, one chlorine free radical, 100,000 of ozone molecules are destroyed. Alright. So if you want to see the chain of reaction, how is this chlorine reacting causing the depletion of ozone is, see this. Chlorine free radical will react with oxygen to form another free radical species, which is Cl, O dot and oxygen gas. Then this free radical is again reacting to form ClO2. Okay. ClO2 in the presence of intense radiations is again forming chlorine free radical and again a chlorine radical. This chlorine radical is further being dissociating to form one more chlorine free radical and again oxygen is released. Further, this chlorine radical which is released, it will once again can cause depletion of ozone. So see, one chlorine free radical is generating so many other free radicals which can degrade the ozone molecules. Hence, one free radical of chlorine causes 100,000 molecules of ozone to be depleted. Alright. Next, let's see what are the effects of ozone depletion. See, just to summarize, we said ozone is formed mainly into the stratospheric region where the light radiations are high. Okay. And how is this depletion caused? Ozone depletion is caused when the ozone molecules collide with another atoms. And the main contributors of ozone depletion is chlorine, which is released from chlorofluorocarbons, which are again used in different kinds of equipment. So these chlorofluorocarbons will release chlorine radicals, which in turn generates a chain of chlorine free radicals which cause degradation of ozone. Now when ozone layer is depleted, it will affect our eyes. So vision will be affected. It will result in irritation. It may lead to blindness. Next, skin. Again, irritation. It can also cause to aging, wrinkling, and as well it can cause skin cancer. Then immune system is drastically affected. The immunity is decreased, because of which susceptibility to different kinds of infections would increase. Crops are affected. Interference with photosynthesis reduces the yield. And even the marine life is affected. Okay. So growth is retarded. Okay. Now how can we prevent the ozone depletion? Now see, oxides of nitrogen will always occur in the atmosphere. You cannot prevent them to cause the degradation of ozone. But instead of chlorofluorocarbons, the replacements with other hydrocarbons can have a lesser effect in degradation of ozone layer. Okay, so we should emphasize on usage of such hydrofluorocarbons. So instead of chlorocarbons, hydrofluorocarbons may be used. So instead of hydrochlorocarbon, usage of hydrofluorocarbon. Okay, so this can help ozone depletion. So what are these hydrofluorocarbons? It can be HCFC 123. It can be HCFC 134, etc. All right. Now after atmospheric pollution, now we have finished atmospheric pollution and stratospheric pollution. We are now moving on to different types of other pollution, which are, we're going to see three types of pollution in detail. The first one is water pollution. Now water pollution. What is water pollution? Water pollution is the degradation of the quality of water that makes it unsafe for use. So degradation in its quality. Degradation in quality, which makes it unfit for use. Okay. So let's directly move on to causes. The first cause would be biological agents. By biological agents we mean bacteria, fungi and protozoa. Alright, and it also includes human sewage, because these parasites are present in human sewage, animal and plant waste, decaying organic matter, etc. Alright, what happens is all these cause degradation in the quality of water. Now remember, oxygen requiring bacteria feed on biological waste. This results in the depletion of oxygen in the water bodies. Now in absence of oxygen, life in the water is reduced. Okay, so a component which we're going to study is biological oxygen demand. Now what is biological oxygen demand? It's the amount of oxygen which is required by bacteria to break down organic matter. Okay, required by bacteria to break down organic matter. Now if bacteria is using all of the oxygen that is present in the water, then what will happen? Less oxygen will be available for the marine life. So BOD should be lesser. A lesser BOD indicates good quality of, high quality of water. Okay, so BOD should always be lesser. Next source is chemical agents. A huge amount of chemical waste is being dumped by industries into the water bodies. So these includes, acids, salts, metals, organic chemicals, detergents. So salts, chemicals, drugs, dyes, paints, varnishes, etc. all being dumped into the water bodies. The next is physical agents. These include suspended solid particulates and heat. The main sources are soil erosion, then runoffs from agriculture, so agricultural runoff, they all will contribute to even mining activities. So they all will cause particulate pollution of water. And we know particulates are very small substances of solid or liquid droplets which causes degradation. Okay. Now what are the effects, harmful effects of water pollution? It will cause a variety of diseases, waterborne diseases, jaundice, dysentery, typhoid, tuberculosis, etc. Okay. Polluted water for irrigation, it damages crops, so damages plant life. Okay, so these are the harmful effects of water pollution. Now water is one of the necessity for living organisms, so we can't just allow any quality of water as drinking water. So there are some standards on how drinking water can be chosen. So for drinking water, the standards is first is lead. Okay. Now lead, the upper limit matlab lead should be lesser than 50 parts per billion. If it is higher, then it can affect reproductive system, liver and kidney. Next particulate matter that we're going to consider is fluorine. Okay. The required fluorine, it should be only 1 parts per million. Now if it is higher, if the fluoride ion concentration is greater than 2 parts per million, then it will cause mottling of teeth, which means brown coloring of teeth. Okay, mottling of teeth will be caused. So it should only be 1 parts per million. Next, the standard is for nitrate. Nitrate, the maximum allowable limit is, so it should be lesser than 50 parts per million. If the level is higher than 50 parts per million, then it can cause methemoglobinemia. Next is sulfate. How much sulfate is allowed? Okay. Moderate levels of sulfate is harmless, but if let's say it's increasing, if it is, so it should be always less than 500 parts per million. If it is greater than 500 parts per million, then it will have luxative effect. Okay. And other metals also, other metals like manganese, then iron, copper, they all have limits specified. So manganese should be lesser than 0.05 parts per million. Iron should be lesser than 0.2 parts per million. Copper should be lesser than 3 parts per million. So for every particulate, there is a limit which is allowed before passing it as drinking water. Alright, next, let's study what is soil pollution. So degradation of soil quality would be soil pollution. Okay. And its major sources are A. Solid waste disposal. So huge amount of waste is disposed on the land, which causes soil pollution. Then industrial waste or effluents. Excessive use of pesticides and herbicides. Next is excessive irrigation. So this causes degradation in the quality. Then in many villages in India, still open defecation is occurring. So open defecation also degrades the quality of soil. then radioactive material being dumped improperly. They all cause degradation of the soil. Alright. What are the effects of soil pollution? So it may decrease in nutritive value. Then it will affect yield of plants. It will decrease the growth of plants. Right? So all these makes us realize that humans should pay a considerable attention towards decrease in pollution of environment. Okay. Now let's study what is industrial waste. Okay, waste is a substance which is not required by either the producer nor the consumer, nor it is required in the process itself, right? And the major industrial waste would be given by oil refineries, thermal plants, nuclear power plants, textile plants, iron and steel industries, and tanneries. Okay, so this waste can be said to be of two types, that is biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Biodegradable, which can be degraded again, which can decompose. So paper, wood, pulp. So this is biodegradable waste. And then there is non-biodegradable waste. Like plastics, which is getting accumulated into our environment. Okay, so after studying all these different types of pollution, that is pollution of the atmosphere, stratosphere, soil, water pollution, what we understand is that we should pay our attention on strategies being devised to reduce these pollutions. So the first strategy that has come into existence is waste management. Okay, now waste management, for waste management there are different methods that is coming into existence. Okay, so you can classify these methods. So the type of method depends on what is the kind of waste that is existent. Say for example, if it is solid waste. So if it is solid waste, then what can be done is, what can the different methods be? You can adopt segregation. Segregation means separation of the waste. Okay, so separation of the waste into different categories. So segregation mostly includes into items which are biodegradable and non-biodegradable. So separation of waste so that they can be treated accordingly. So biodegradable and non-biodegradable. You have to separate the waste. Alright. Next that can be adopted is dumping. Now an average city resident produces tons of waste every year. So cities run out of spaces. So there are several sites which are basically reserved for waste disposal. Okay. So waste is being simply dumped off. Okay. So nowadays what method is used is landfill. So solid waste is produced in thin layers. So what is landfill? Solid waste is produced in thin layers, and each layer is solidified by bulldozer for the next layer to be deposited. So after every 3 layers a clean earth is added, so that is also again solidified. So it would reduce the space which is occupied by dumping. Okay. Another method of treating solid waste is incineration. Incineration simply means burning. Okay, so incineration. So you are burning in order to reduce the quantity of waste. So burning to reduce the quantity. And it is being reduced up to 90%. Okay. Now initially the methods that were used for burning of waste used to cause air pollution, but these days there are different kinds of equipments like filter bags, precipitators and wet scrubbers being used in order to reduce air pollution. And the last method of treating solid waste would be composting. Now this is the most efficient method, but it requires patience. Okay. So what is done is waste is segregated into biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Now whatever is biodegradable, they are put in a pit. Okay. So biodegradable is put in a pit. Okay. And it is layered in such a way so that air can enter and water is also added, and then it is covered. Okay. Now after some days what comes out is manure, which can be used in agriculture. Okay. So this is how we can treat solid waste. Okay. Then how can you treat liquid waste? Now before just directly dumping liquid waste into the environment, we should have first treatment, effluent treatment, in order to reduce its damaging capacity. So effluent treatment can be done. Okay, A. Then a proper drainage system can be devised. Okay, so this is how you can treat your liquid waste. And the third type of waste, which is gaseous waste. Okay, they can be trapped by using of scrubbers and precipitators. All right, next let's study what is green chemistry. So green chemistry is the use of chemistry for pollution prevention. So it is the use of chemistry. So green chemistry is use of chemistry to reduce pollution by using environmentally conscious designs of chemical products. Okay, so by using environmental conscious processes that will again reduce or eliminate generation of harmful substances. Okay, now what are the goals of these green chemistries? First immediate goal is to reduce down environmental pollution. Okay, second is to develop processes that would use renewable reactants. Okay, next is to use processes which would be less obnoxious in terms of the waste that is released. Okay, and the last is to minimize the byproducts. So the idea is to have 100% utilization of the reactants. Okay, So this we can calculate by percent atom economy. Percent atom economy. It's a very important concept. Let's consider it on next page. What is this percent atom economy? Okay, so it is the formula mass of product upon sum of formula mass of reactants. Okay, so a good atom economy means most of the reactants are converted into the product, and so there is less byproduct or waste disposable products that are being formed. Okay, the next aim is to develop products that are less toxic. So even the products should be less toxic. Next aim is to develop degradable products. Okay, degradable products, so that they don't get accumulated into the environment, to avoid accumulation, bioaccumulation or in environment accumulation. Okay, then to reduce the requirements of hazardous, environmentally persistent solvents and extractants in chemical processes. So to reduce hazardous reactants. Next is to improve the efficiency by developing low temperatures and low pressures. Okay, and by using new and improved catalyst. Alright, so these are the aims of green chemistry. Now there are some applications which are extremely important of how the conventional methods have been changed into more efficient production methods. Okay, so the conventional method was ethane cyanide reacting with water molecule in the presence of sulfuric acid and ammonia to form acrylamide. Plus ammonium sulfate is formed, which is actually not required. Okay, now the alternative method by application of green chemistry is same reactant, but the conditions are now different. It has been treated in the presence of nitrile hydratase, which is forming again acrylamide. But there is no byproduct. Okay, so only that product is formed which is required. Next is conventional bleaching method. So conventional bleaching method used to involve chlorine, and chlorine we know is very hazardous for ozone depletion. So nowadays or alternative method that is used is usage of hydrogen peroxide, okay, with suitable catalyst which promotes the bleaching. All right, and the last is oxidation of ethene in presence of catalyst. It gives ethanol, but the yield is increased here. So see, we are taking ethene, and oxidation in the presence of a catalyst has increased the yield of ethanol to 90%. So these are the applications of green chemistry.